the Montessori teachers and the trainees and the aspirants, those who would like to work there in the field of Montessori. As you know, the Montessori system is the latest system of early childhood education. Even though it is the latest system, it could make a huge impact in the society. And how should be a Montessori or passionate Montessori teacher? Or what is the core of Montessori system? Or what is the essence of Montessori system? Or how can we get a better output from Montessori classes? These are the main queries of Montessori system and the syllabus. Here, we are blessed with an outstanding guest. He has been working in the Montessori field since 1979. And he is the founder of International Montessori Society. He established International Montessori Society, IMS, in 1979. Earlier, he worked as an assistant professor. Later, he moved to the Montessori teacher. Eventually, he became as a Montessori teacher trainer. Later, his thought turned as how the Montessori method can be make it as more effective as Maria Montessori's imagination. He started his research and reached conclusion as true natural Montessori teaching. It follows the laws of nature. He consolidated his technology as scientific Montessori teaching in a highly effective and reliable manner that was never possible. Yes, it's none other than Mr. Lee Havis, the founder of International Montessori Society from London. On behalf of each and everyone, I would like to welcome Mr. Lee Havis to proceed with his experience. Sir, please.
Well, thank you very much for that very nice, somewhat comprehensive introduction to my background. It really doesn't touch the personal drama that takes place within a person learning about this great work that Dr. Maria Montessori started back in 1907. We all start at our own point in life, don't we? Not just being born, but in the field of education, we start with what we know. And when I started working with children, I started like a lot of you folks. I know you're training to be Montessori teachers and to improve Montessori teaching. Everybody starts with the level of knowledge that they have and then begin a journey. You know, Dr. Montessori started that way too. She didn't just start in 1907. She started just like all of us start with a limited amount of knowledge. She rested on the work that people came before her who had started in this idea of observing children rather than teaching them. What Dr. Itard and Séguin, two French physicians, called scientific education. Dr. Montessori took this idea of observing children into a group of young children to experiment to see what would happen. She didn't know, but she had faith that something good would happen. And in her experimental study, she discovered something amazing, something which is a breakthrough for all of us, for the whole world, for humanity. And that is our true nature, the true nature that's in all of us. She found it in little children through what she called normalization. Now, all of that, the terminology and what we know today after 100 years, really comes down to a very simple idea of observing children given freedom in an environment that allows for their true nature to emerge. What is their true nature? When I started, I didn't start with knowledge that was complete. I started as a very imperfect person, but inspired by the concept of freedom. It was a wonderful idea. Her books are full of wonderful discoveries of what our true nature is: perfect, good, in harmony with the entire environment, an inspiring vision of hope and promise for all humanity. But how do you bring that about? And I was frustrated with that. When I first started, I was terrible. I had the idea, but I could not put it into practice. And the problem is that Dr. Montessori, for all her insight and knowledge over many years of realizing this great discovery, didn't understand it herself. And I know that's shocking for a lot of people. But the fact is that her communication of what she was doing was imperfect. It was instinctive primarily. It was using scientific education, but not without a full understanding of exactly what is involved in practicing this and actually being with children in this enlightened way. When I was struggling with this in training teachers in a conventional way, I made the discovery that changed my life and that started me on a path that has evolved from the International Montessori Society in 1979. And what I discovered was what it is that is actually happening when you are observing children in this very unique way. And that is, you're looking at an individual child. The first key to what we call Montessori teaching, what I'm going to call scientific teaching, is that each child is a unique spiritual being, not a physical body, not even a personality, but an unknown entity. You have to be able to see an individual child in that way, and that's very difficult. All the problems that we have in training teachers come down to the way we look at the child, because we have to train our mind to think differently from the way society looks at people in general, but certainly children specifically. So looking at an individual child in that unique way, that spiritual way of being, you look at the environment around that child. It's a very specific environment. The environment is made of three elements: of children, physical objects, and that society. In the environment around that child. What is scientific observation, what I'm going to call scientific teaching, is removing the detrimental influences from that environment, from those three elements. I'm going to say them again: physical objects, other children, and the adult personality. All that Montessori teaching is, or scientific teaching is a function or a process of removing those detrimental influences. You're doing nothing to the child. The child has a perfect inner guidance. And what we're doing is we're allowing that perfect inner guidance to reveal itself. So that was my discovery, to see what the environment is. The environment becomes very important because that's where the teaching happens. You don't do anything to the child, and that's very difficult in training ourselves to look at what we're doing with children in that indirect way. Now, it's all in Dr. Montessori's writings, but she was not clear and precise about what the environment is in the way that I'm speaking to you now, the way that comes through the work that IMS is doing. And I struggled even after 1979 communicating this to teachers. I wanted them to be able to function in this way. I knew it could be done, but it was very, very difficult. So over the course of a distance learning course that I was conducting, and over 150 workshops all around the world, I was helping teachers to understand this very unique way of looking at the child, observing the child, and bringing about this wonderful true nature that Dr. Montessori discovered in 1907. And what happened in that process of showing teachers how to practically put this into a functional classroom situation, I discovered in 2003 what I'm calling a technology of scientific education. And that's really been the work that my organization has been doing uh, to basically present and elucidate and give this technology to teachers. The technology is made up of what's on this sheet here: 10, 10 techniques, 20 protocols, a certain number of 3 lesson presentations, and a number of safe words. I'm going to introduce the basic framework of the technology to give us an idea. That's what we can accomplish in our session today. The techniques are things that you do, and I'm going to talk about 3 of the most important ones: eye contact, proximity, distraction, but there's others that are listed here too. The protocols are the rules or the way that you implement these techniques. Now, I want to go back again to indicate that what we're doing is controlling the environment, not the child. So all of this technology is to function in a way to remove detrimental influences from around the child. So the lesson presentations are functional units of techniques and protocols working together in particular ways. There are actually 3 forms of interacting with the environment. One is to resolve misbehavior. One is what I call sensorial introduction, which is a way to introduce materials to children that they're going to use. The third is a nomenclature lesson, which is introducing language. The safe words are important to avoid breaking the protocols when you're talking to children. One of the worst mistakes that teachers make is the language that they use with children. So we have protocols like don't correct the child, no negative attention to misbehavior. In order to implement that, you need as much control as possible. So the safe words are alternatives. One safe word, for example, it's a phrase. It's an implementation of one of these techniques called clear direction. Clear direction is just telling the child to do something. But what do you say? One of the most important safe word phrases is come over here, let me show you something. Now, this may seem very obscure, very different and unusual, but we're dealing with a very unusual and unique way of interacting with children. We're observing children, but to observe children, we have to remove what is separating us, like a mist in our eyes. We have to remove the mist, which means that we have to remove detrimental influences. That is, the way the environment is causing misbehavior. There is no misbehavior in a perfect spiritual being. So when we don't see things that are in harmony, we look for the cause as a detrimental influence in the environment around the child. And we just have to train our mind to do that. That's what all IMS Montessori teaching is all about. It's about training to function in a way that controls the environment, not the child. Let me give you an example. Um, eye contact. You notice in this picture, the teacher is talking to the child without eye contact, a very common mistake. Adults make that without, parents make that all the time. They say children don't listen. They're not listening because there's no eye contact. Now, you don't force the eye contact, but you don't talk while the child is not looking to you. There's a protocol called eye contact before talking. So that's a rule to follow. If you follow that rule, you get a cooperation, you get a responsiveness from the child. So when you talk to the child, have eye contact. And when you're talking, don't have a frown on your face or some negative or feeling emotion. Just be neutral or friendly. Now, if there is misbehavior, what do you do? Well, here's another technique. It's called proximity. Just walk over, get closer to the situation. So one of the very first action techniques to take is to move closer to the situation. So that's an implementation of a technique called proximity. And oftentimes that alone will stimulate a response to resolve the misbehavior. There is also moving away from the child. When the children are looking at you or there's a negative relation, if you move away, which is reverse proximity, you reduce the detrimental influence of the adult personality. You see how you're controlling the adult personality by what you do and by what you say and by what you don't say and how you control your language, how you control your movement. The technology is all about the mechanisms, the devices, the techniques to do that. Now, maybe you've seen children who misbehave with objects. Now, here's an example of how to control the physical object with not control the child. So the child is over here, not the physical body, not the personality, not the anger, but the unknown entity is there. So what you're doing, this is a demonstration of distraction. What you're doing with distraction is getting the child's attention. So you get the child's attention by holding or touching what the child is looking at or drawing the child's attention. So when you do that, you'll see that you will get the child's attention. And when you do, then you give a clear direction. One of the clear directions that I indicated before is come over here, let me show you something. So there's a very common little description of 3 techniques: eye contact, proximity, and distraction. Now, in the workshops that I do currently, I have many opportunities to give role play demonstrations. And at my website, IMS website, imsmontessori.org, you can see pictures and images, and there's there's some nice little videos of watching me interact with children, showing the different techniques and how they're actually played out. Of course, it's one thing to study them in an academic way. It's another thing when you're actually with the child, because what happens? All of those prejudices, all of those instinctive, emotional feelings come out. and you make mistakes. So it's important to realize that mistakes are part of the process, that we're experimenting. And what a lesson presentation is actually an experiment. You're trying to interact with what we call a scenario. A scenario is the child and its environment. We're interacting with a scenario when we conduct a lesson presentation. And so you conduct experiments. You try one technique, you follow the protocols, you adjust. One of the techniques is repetition. Just doing the same thing again oftentimes is what you need to do. Now, in the workshops that I do after 2003, I lay out the technology and give examples and work through very systematically. And you can see some examples at my website for that. Now, I've compiled the introduction of this technology into what I call the Danbury study materials. In 2006, I edited portions of a workshop I did in Danbury, Connecticut, and put them into two, uh, I guess there are 4 cassettes in here, a set of audio CDs that you can listen to. And you can hear me talking to people, walking through a number of scenarios and situations. That comes along with we sell it at the IMS website, along with a study guide. There's the study guide. And you can see it's 40 plus pages. I've edited it several times to keep updating it because I always learn. I'm always improving, polishing things up. Um, the the most current edition was from 2019, so it's just a year old. I want to show you another image here of what I use in the workshops quite a bit. It's a symbolic representation of what a classroom looks like. Here's the teacher, and here are different scenarios, different situations where children are in conflict with objects or in conflict with each other, or maybe just in fantasy, just by themselves. You have to decide which scenario to resolve or to interact with as a practical matter dealing with a group of children. There's a protocol for that, the most important protocol that we have called well-being of the total environment. That means you have to set priorities. You have to decide what is most important in that classroom that needs your attention. You know, for me, my classroom is the whole world, and it's a mess. It's terrible. Uh, where are you going to begin? What are you going to do about it? You have to begin, you have to make a judgment that you can't solve everything all at once. You have to take what you think is the highest priority and focus your attention on that. So in a classroom, you have a little mini world. You have a community of children. They come from different backgrounds, different home situations, and you have to decide which scenario you're going to resolve, which one you're going to deal with. And there's a whole, in the workshop, I lay out a whole a functionality of dealing with a classroom, what I call polishing the environment, breaking it down into the different stages of working through a group, a classroom situation or a classroom of children where you're moving from a very disorganized state to what Dr. Montessori would call the normalized state, which is children independent, self-disciplined, self-directed. You don't even need to be there because the children are interacting with the materials that they're learning from directly, and there is nothing that is detrimental in the environment. As long as the materials are self-teaching and the children are calm and orderly, they're in harmony with nature, you're seeing the reality of the child's true nature emerging in what Dr. Montessori called the normalized condition. So that's an introduction, very brief, but if it will give you an idea of what IMS is about. If you want more information, there is a wonderful distance learning course that I do, and you're welcome to uh, look at it and follow up on that. You can order the Danbury audio CD and study guide as your own self-study into the technology, which is wonderful. A number of people are using that. imsmontessori.org is the website, so you can get in touch with me there. IMS also recognizes schools that are committed to this type of what I call true natural Montessori teaching or scientific education, and of course membership, and we have publications and continue to help people learn and study as they go along. So I'm going to open it up to questions if there are any. I'll try to answer.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. So let me know one thing. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay then. Regarding regarding the Montessori classroom, is there any age group division is there in the Montessori classroom in the IMS level? Because Maria Montessori system, they are classifying the students as in 5 age category, right? Likewise, any age group is there in the IMS level?
Didn't quite understand what you're saying. Are you talking about the age level?
Yeah, age level, grouping of students. As Maria Montessori system, they are grouping the students as particular age group, 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9. Likewise, some age group divisions are there. Likewise, IMS also suggesting any age group division among the students.
Well, the ideal age group
Yeah.
is children under 6. The primary distance learning course that IMS offers is really the foundation of all Montessori teaching or scientific teaching, ages 2 to 6. You can start children in a group situation if they know how to handle themselves for the bathroom routine by themselves, so it doesn't take a lot of adult attention. We're not dealing with babies or toddlers that need a lot of personal attention. If they're able to be independent in terms of walking around, taking care of their bathroom needs, then that usually happens around the age of 2.5 or so. So, and children as young as 2.5 are just brilliant. They're just my my favorite children because everything is exciting and they're learning. They're 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 absorbing the environment. We know that the young child has an absorbent mind and they embrace everything. That's why you have to be so careful about what you're doing around little children. They watch everything that you're doing. They imitate. Their minds are just um, taking in everything that is in the environment. So it's a very sensitive period, sensitive for order, sensitive for self-discipline. So that is a real focus of attention. If they can become normalized, if they can work through their distractions and inattention to return to their true nature, which is the great discovery that Dr. Montessori made, that children can normalize, they can recover their true nature in this environment that is committed to laws of nature. You know, how I look at scientific teaching is a scientific way of being committed to laws of nature. And the power of the environment is nowhere more greater than with the young child who is still in that formative period. By the time they get to be about 6, their sense of reality is established. Not perfectly, there's obviously development that's taking place, but there's a very important shift that occurs around age 6 or 7, and they enter a different type of learning. So the fundamental foundation is before the age of 6.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now, here it is, Grishma ma'am is there. So let me invite Grishma ma'am with her some doubts. Grishma ma'am, please.
Thank you, Najmat ma'am. Hello, sir. So
Hello.
I have a question. Uh, Dr. Maria Montessori, actually, she started the Montessori method of education in special children initially, and she found great changes in them. So later, she thought like, why can't we introduce this in normal children? So my question is, can a special child be with a normal child? Actually, it is yes, but will the child feel indifferent?
I didn't quite get that. When the child deviates from normal, is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Not like that, sir. A special child in the sense like with special disabilities, like some hearing disability or something like that.
When
So
the
when
child,
he or she be with a normal child, will that child feel indifferent, or will it be a problem for that child?
you're saying when the child has some uh, uh, special needs?
Yeah, special disabilities.
Yeah. You mean like the child has autism or diagnosed
Yeah,
with
exactly. Yes,
with
sir. Yes.
Down syndrome? You
Yes,
know,
yes.
Down syndrome
Yes, I've heard
doesn't
about it.
function normally.
Yes, sir. That was my question.
Yeah. Well, you, I every there are degrees of dysfunction that we see in children, and I always, I always, I always approach every child exactly the same way fundamentally, and I see the child as an unknown spiritual being. So when I see dysfunction of any sort, I look at the environment and I focus my attention on that. I don't judge the child per se. Now, I know that there are things that are very fundamental. If a child is missing his legs, for example, or he's blind or he's deaf, it's very hard to avoid that. But I've seen children overcome these difficulties in incredible ways if you focus on the things that you can do to improve the situation. And it's always in the environment. The problem is always in the environment. I'll tell you one example. I was teaching a classroom of children just one time a week. I just had a short period of time. But there was one child, he was 12 years old. He came in screaming and yelling, talking like I'm the king of the world, no eye contact with anyone. I mean, he had obviously spent all his school life in special needs schools. He was completely disconnected. I had to protect the other children because I had young children in the classroom. I had to protect them every day from what he would do would grab them. He would treat them like objects. So over a period of time, he got better. And frankly, I just kept focusing on the other children. I never judged him. I never did anything special to him. I just focused on the environment. One day, one of my students in my training program happened to visit my class, and we were talking to one side, and she remarked, I think it's terrific the way you trained your assistant here. He's doing the lessons exactly the way you taught us. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any assistant. Well, look at him. And she was looking at that 12-year-old kid. He was doing exactly what I was doing with the young children. He was treating them kindly and gently. I didn't even realize it because it happened so slowly. You know something? That 12-year-old kid became coach of a sports team. Later, he graduated from an important university as a special education teacher. So you never know what can emerge. And I've seen it happen. I have such total confidence in what I'm speaking about that um, uh, you know it's it comes from it come. But believe me, I've earned it honestly. I mean, I've suffered terribly with many failed experiments to know what I'm saying is true. But I know that there are many mistakes that you make when you're trying to do something good. You're going to make mistakes. So you need other people to help you, guide you along the way, and you need the tools like the technology. I mean, I've just touched on it. There are other important mechanisms and tools that correct your behavior. If you know the technology, you've got the tools that are available to help you. That help?
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. That was a clear explanation. Thank you so much.
Okay, sir. So IMS is conducting teachers training courses, right? So what is the basic qualification for a teacher to undergo Montessori teacher training course?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Can you hear me? The IMS is conducting the teacher training course right now, right?
So you have teachers in the training program right now.
Yeah. So what is the basic qualification for the eligibility for the teacher training course? Basic qualification. Maybe matriculation or degree. So the Kerala, it is having likewise some systems. Is there any basic qualification? Basic?
Uh, is there any way for your teachers to participate in this learning? Is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
I didn't understand the question.
Montessori teacher training courses are there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What will be the basic qualification for entering as a teacher training
Well,
course? 12th or
to
10th?
enroll into the distance learning course, obviously there's a tuition cost involved, but it's an English-based course. You have to be able to write and read English, and have a basic educational background. But other than that, it's just filling out an application, having a good attitude to handle distance learning. It it's an individualized course, so I do workshops. I haven't done a workshop in a long time. It's very difficult when you have to be 6 feet away from people, and you teach for instance. But the workshops, I have two workshops organized. Something that I've wanted to do. Have people that are it's a simple process, but it's doable. I have never done a workshop in India, but I've done workshops in a lot of different places: China, Brunei, Malaysia, Australia, of course, a lot in the United States and Canada. So that's a good option, but it needs a little bit of organization to bring that about. This webinar is something that I hope will be very helpful. I think that if we broadcast this, information, we can do more seminars like this. Get the technology out so people can become aware of it. And of course, the home study program, the self-study program is available. You could order that. My goodness, I've got school owners that are ordering it for their staff and training them by listening to the audio CD and working through the study guide. That's an inexpensive way to learn the technology.
Okay, thank you, sir. Again, let me invite Grishma ma'am with other question.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello, sir. This is my next question to you. Children usually ask a lot of questions to us, to the elders, but sometimes it is very difficult to answer them. So, how to handle such unanswerable questions?
How do you handle?
Unanswerable questions. Few questions children ask, we really don't have an answer to them.
Yeah, that's great. Look at the techniques. Let's do a little role play right now. You ask me a question and I'll demonstrate what to do. You be the child. Here's a good question. What is the nature of life? What is the purpose of life? How about that?
To
The
live
question.
peacefully.
Ask me the question.
Okay, I'll ask you. So, what is the purpose of life?
What is the purpose of life? What do you think?
To live in a good manner, to live peacefully.
You get the idea? The answer is within you. It's within the child. The child has the answer. The child is asking that question to begin a process of understanding. You're not dismissing the question. You're not saying buzz off. You're simply giving the child a chance to ask it to himself in a way that can give him the right answer. Now, if that wasn't a satisfactory reply, you could ask another question and I could help you get to the answer. But it's a matter of independence, isn't it? You don't want to depend on my answers, do you? You want to know the answers for yourself. And you need to have confidence that you can find the answers. And that's a big part of Montessori teaching, isn't it? Helping children to find their own way, because in the end, you're not going to be there for them, are you? They've got to figure it out for themselves. That's what's missing in the world today is they're not independent, are they? Too many people are not really thinking things through and getting their own answers to problems. And it's a dangerous situation for humanity. So you have an opportunity to make a really important contribution to the future of humanity by helping children to think for themselves.
Okay, thank you.
You know what that's called? That's a technique called reflective language. When you reply back to the child something that they tell you, it's called reflective language. It's a good technique.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Then, sir, do the Montessori system has any figured out curriculum between 2 to 6 years old? They have to complete this much of syllabi. Likewise, any figured curriculum is there?
I didn't get the question.
Because wherever it is, if it is any traditional system, they may have any specialized curriculum. Syllabi has to complete. Likewise, any
We have a standard syllabus regarding Montessori. Ma'am's question is, for the normal method of education, we do have a standard syllabus where we are supposed to complete that syllabus for the academic year. So in Montessori, do we have such a syllabus that every child should follow or every school should follow?
Well, for me, the child has a curriculum within himself. Are you following what I'm saying? The child has a teacher within himself, an inner teacher. It's the curriculum and the plan, the syllabus of that inner teacher that concerns me. So it's a question of freedom. It's a question of trusting the child's inner guidance. Now, in terms of controlling the environment, you have a responsibility to put things in the environment that will be of assistance to that inner teacher. So that's why you have all those lovely Montessori materials, right? And that's why you show them how to use those materials, because the teacher within the child needs that from the environment. You have a responsibility to prepare the environment with good self-teaching materials. Pink tower, broad stairs, sandpaper letters, number rods, numbers.
Okay, okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. So let me invite Seji ma'am to ask a question. Seji ma'am, please.
Thank you, Nechmat ma'am. Sir, your session was really helpful. Now, it's very helpful for the teachers.
Well, you're very
No.
nice to them.
Yeah. So now my question is, how to change a naughty kid to a normal stage?
Say that again.
How to change a naughty child to a normal stage?
How does Montessori teaching compare with normal children?
No, sir. The question is actually how to change a naughty kid. Maybe how to change a kid to a normalized child.
How to change conditions to be more like Dr. Montessori's approach?
Yeah, how to make a child to a normalized position. I mean, to a normalized level.
How to change an environment to become more consistent with laws of nature?
Sorry, sir, we didn't get you.
Talking about changing the environment.
Not about changing the environment. How to make a child normalized.
A naughty child to a normal child.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. First of all, think of the way you're asking the question. I don't want to be judgmental, but just the way you're asking the question is sort of where the problem is. The child is not naughty. The child is already perfect. His being is absolutely guided from within. What you're seeing in the naughty behavior of the child is something detrimental, harmful in the environment. When we call a naughty or a misbehaving child, we're really seeing something that is wrong in the environment. Are you following me?
Okay.
You see the behavior, but the cause of the behavior, the misbehavior, is in the environment.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So you
So
change, that behavior changes by itself when you remove what is detrimental in the environment.
Okay. So we have to change the environment first before changing the child.
Behavior changes by itself because children are normal. Children are perfect. When you look at them as a spiritual being, there's no imperfection. But you just don't change children. You change the environment. And that will have that indirect function will bring about the child's true nature.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. It's any other question from the part of Grishma ma'am or Seji ma'am?
Yes, sir. I have one more question. One
Maybe.
last question from my side.
Okay, Grishma ma'am.
Okay.
Let Grishma ma'am.
Do we really need the term discipline in Montessori? And what is discipline according to you?
Maybe you could you put that question in writing so I can see it? I'm having a hard time understanding what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay. What is discipline?
Yeah, exactly. That was my question.
What is discipline? Oh, wow. Um, uh, I think you may be talking about obedience. That's really more the question, isn't it? Why is it?
Yes, sir.
How do you correct disobedience when a child is disobedient? Is that a better way of looking at it? Because look, a child has by nature self-discipline. So what you mean, I think, is what do you do when a child is disobedient? How do you deal with that? Is that a fair way of looking at the situation? There, there's only I don't want to deviate from your issue, but I really think that you're probably talking about disobedience. Otherwise, I don't know what you mean by discipline. Discipline. What is discipline? Discipline is a quality of harmony with the environment. A child is disciplined when a child is controlling his behavior in harmony with laws of nature. A child is good. A child does the right thing. A child develops normally self-discipline, controls his own actions in harmony with the environment, waits his turn, things like that. Now, if a child doesn't do those things, that may be an issue. If a child doesn't do those things, there's some good guidance from the technology.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
What is the characteristic of Montessori environment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For me, the environment, the Montessori environment, is a psychic condition, a way of being, or a way of being committed to laws of nature, or you might look at it this way, as a commitment to laws of nature. It's a psychic condition. The Montessori environment for me is a psychic condition that you create by being committed to laws of nature. How do you do that? How do you create that? You implement the technology, you follow laws of nature. You know what the technology is? The technology is a functional equivalent of following laws of nature. If you follow and use the technology the way it's designed, you will be creating the Montessori environment.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Any other question from anyone's side? Jimol? Mr. G, unmute it and say.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, I have one question. So my question is, forcing a child to do something or learn something, will it be helpful?
Would it be helpful for the child to, forcing a child, there's a protocol called don't correct the child. I don't see how that is an indirect way of interacting with a child. If you control the child, you're violating the basic premise that the problem is in the environment. You need to control the environment. But let me say that the child's physical body is not the child. You have to be very sensitive to the child's physical body, not to interact with it in violation of laws of nature. You know, there's a protocol called least amount of adult involvement. So you don't want to touch the child physically against the will of the child. And that's probably the most delicate part of Montessori teaching, is when you have to interact with a child who is in danger or physical harm, you sometimes have to touch or maybe even hold the child. But you have to do it in a way that is not violating their integrity as a spiritual being. Just remember that the physical body is not the child. It's part of the environment, but it's a very close part of the child's spiritual being. So you have to be very careful when you interact with children at that level. But occasionally you do have to touch children. Suppose two children are fighting with each other. You need to protect the child who's being hurt, but you don't protect the child by hitting or grabbing what I call the hub child, the child who is perpetrating it. You control the other child. You follow me? You find the child who is the hub, the child that you're focusing on, and then you look at other children in the environment. And those other children you can touch, you can hold in a way to protect them. But it's not really forcing the child, it's really protecting the child from physical harm.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Modern technology with Montessori system. What type of modern technology are we talking about? Computers?
Yeah, definitely, sir. Because now the system is going in an online way, right? Then likewise, any technologies can we integrate with the Montessori system?
Well, I don't see any problem with that as long as the child is independent and self-disciplined in in uh, in using that equipment. Now, I've been in classrooms where they have, and every classroom ought to have some sort of a, an iPad or a computer where they can learn keyboard, and there are a lot of excellent um, activities that children can learn through the modern technology. So I don't see any conflict in that at all. As long as they're using it independently, they're not using it for fantasy, or they're not abusing the equipment in some way. You teach them how to use it, and then at their level of ability, they'll benefit from it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, anyone has any questions? No. So, sir, we would like to hear any words. Do you have any suggestion to us? We all are working there in the Montessori field. So, for the teachers, can you give any message as a Montessori teacher or their behavior? Can you give any message we would like to hear?
Well, what I like to hear is people using the technology and giving me back a report, letting me know how it works. So that's my homework for the teachers there, if you don't mind. I appreciate the opportunity. It really is it's an interesting experiment to see what we can accomplish in creating this this publication. But I'd like to hear back from the teachers. I'd like to know if they think they can use the technology, if they can If there, and I know it's just an introduction, but if there's some things that they can learn from it, that they can let me know how that works, or ask more questions. We have on Facebook, um, we have a discussion group, IMS discussion group, over 7,000 members. It's called Montessori Tools and Tips, and anybody can join. And it's a wonderful chance to interact with people all over the world, ask questions, and find out what other people are doing. And I always, I always look for people who are talking about and using the technology, because I think that is breakthrough knowledge. And it's very sad, and it's kind of disappointing if people who care so much about children and who care so much about peace and love and harmony in the world. I hear that all the time. And yet, in practice, they don't make it possible, because what we're doing to children is such a disgrace. I'm I don't mean it personally. I just mean in general that that we live in a very degraded condition in humanity, and it doesn't have to be that way. It's a wonderful vision, this new education and a new humanity that Dr. Montessori brought into the world with her great discovery. But if we don't create the conditions that allow that to happen, then we just keep making the same mistakes. We keep adding suffering and misery and poverty and degradation and immorality and evil conditions in the world from one generation to the next. I try to look ahead. I think we have to look ahead about 1,000 years to envision the time when we look back at today and ask ourselves, how could we do such terrible things to children? And we would do it in the name of love, and the name of discipline, and the name of education, and even in the name of Montessori. I'm sorry to say that we're doing wrong things, and it doesn't have to be that way. If we can change our thinking and and um, and use the knowledge that we now have. We didn't have that back in the 1920s and the 1930s, and even the whole century that's gone before. But we have the tools now. The technology is a wonderful set of tools that is available. Um, but putting it into practice is where the value comes from. It doesn't mean anything. Having developed all of this doesn't mean anything if people don't put it into practice. So I like to hear from teachers who are using the technology, who are trying to put this into practice. It's very inspiring and encouraging for me. So I thank you all for tuning in and giving an opportunity. Thanks to all the viewers and people who've listened on the broadcast too. Thanks to the host also, G-Shad, for putting this together.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. We are moving to the vote of thanks. Before moving to the vote of thanks, let me share the speciality of today's program. As the sir told, with the Seed Global Schools also having a training institute affiliated under the Kelton. So every year we are giving the quality training to the teachers. And the same way this year also, we were moving to the next academic year for the Montessori teachers training this month onwards. So related on, we were searching for the best or eminent faculty who can give or contribute a good experience as a manual to us. Here, we blessed with a best source that available at present, Mr. Lee Havis. So on behalf of the Seed Global School and viewers, I extend my sincere gratitude to Mr. Lee Havis because your presence make these sessions more resourceful. Thank you so much, sir. And let me extend a heartfelt thanks to Grishma ma'am and Seji ma'am for your active participation. And a lovely thanks to those who are watching this session. Thank you so much. Have a nice time.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable